The laughter came first. Loud, careless, cruel. The kind that fills a golden ballroom and bounces off marble floors. Under the chandeliers, every sparkle seemed to mock her. Amara stood at the edge of it all, invisible, clutching a silver tray that shook in her hands. The scent of champagne and roses filled the air, masking the quiet humiliation of a woman who had learned to survive in silence. In the center of the room, Ethan Moreau, the young French millionaire everyone admired, was gliding across the dance floor, every move polished, every smile rehearsed. His crisp white suit shimmered, his shoes caught the light, and people clapped like he was royalty. But behind that applause was arrogance, the kind that comes from never being told no. When his glass ran dry, his eyes caught Amara's. He didn't see her as a person, just a servant, another shadow in his perfect night. "You there," he called out, his words cutting through the music. "Can you dance, Maid?" The violin stopped mid-note. The laughter quieted into stunned whispers. Amara froze, her breath shallow, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan leaned back, a smirk spreading across his face. "If you can dance this tango better than me," he sneered, "I'll marry you." Laughter roared again. People nudged each other, delighted by the spectacle. But Amara didn't look away. Slowly, she set the tray down. The clinking glass against silver echoed louder than the music had. Her eyes met his, steady, calm, almost sorrowful. The room waited for her to crumble. Instead, she took a single step forward. Then another. The murmur turned to silence. She stopped in front of him, her face inches from his, her voice soft but firm. "One song," she said. The quartet hesitated. Ethan, drunk with pride, gave a lazy nod. The music started again, slow and haunting. And then Amara moved. No one expected what they saw next. She didn't just dance, she told a story. Her body spoke of hunger, of pain, of nights she cried quietly so others wouldn't hear. Each step was a memory. Each turn was defiance. She moved like she was pulling life from the air itself. The rhythm wrapped around her like armor, her arms cutting through silence, her feet gliding with grace that came from years of carrying weight no one else could see. The crowd forgot to breathe. Ethan's smirk faded. His hand, once confident, began to tremble as she guided him through the dance he thought he owned. Every eye in the room followed her. The laughter was gone now, replaced by awe. When she spun for the final time, her hair brushed against his shoulder like a whisper. Then, the music stopped. Silence. You could hear the faint hum of the chandeliers above. Amara stepped back, not bowing, not smiling. She looked at him, her voice steady and clear. "You said you'd marry me if I danced this tango." The words hung in the air. Ethan stood frozen, eyes wide, pride shattered. No one clapped. No one laughed. For the first time in his life, the room wasn't his anymore. It was hers. She turned and walked away, the soft click of her heels echoing through the marble hall. No one dared to stop her. Every phone in the room had captured it. The maid who danced like a queen, the millionaire left speechless. By the time Ethan realized what had happened, it was too late. The cameras were already flashing. Guests whispered, faces pale with guilt. Somewhere near the back, a woman muttered, "She danced like she had something to say." And she had. She just didn't need words to say it. Ethan stood there, chest tight, unable to move. His fiancée, a woman of status and money, stared at him with disgust before walking away. "You made a fool of yourself," she hissed, but he barely heard her. His gaze was fixed on the door Amara had disappeared through. He didn't understand why his throat burned, why something inside him ached. All he knew was that he had been defeated, not by power, but by grace. Outside, the night air was cool. Amara walked down the marble steps, tears gathering but never falling. She had spent years cleaning other people's messes, learning to stay quiet, learning to be small. But tonight, she remembered who she was before the world told her to kneel. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Never let them tell you what your worth is, baby. You already know." Inside the ballroom, Ethan tried to laugh it off. Tried to joke, to salvage what little pride he had left. But the laughter sounded hollow now. Someone replayed the video on their phone, the sight of Amara's fierce eyes, the movement of her body, the silence that followed. Guests shook their heads. She humbled him, one whispered. Did you see the way she looked at him? Hours later, when the party ended and the lights dimmed, Ethan found himself alone. Champagne glasses lay half full on tables, the floor littered with confetti. He walked to the center of the ballroom where it had all happened. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, lavender and something warm, human. He stood there, replaying the moment in his mind again and again. He had mocked her, tried to humiliate her, but somehow she had stripped him of every ounce of pride he had left. He poured himself another drink, but it didn't taste the same. Nothing did. The laughter of the night still echoed faintly, but all he could hear was her soft voice, the way she had said those words, not angry, not vengeful, just true. You said you'd marry me if I danced this tango. It wasn't about marriage. It was about respect. About dignity. About showing him that power doesn't always belong to the one with money. It belongs to the one who refuses to be broken. The next morning, the video went viral. Millions watched. Comments poured in, some in disbelief, others in awe. She showed more class than all of them combined. That's what grace looks like. For Ethan, it was a nightmare. For Amara, it was freedom. She didn't want fame. She didn't even read the headlines. She just wanted to breathe again. As the sun rose, she walked past the grand gates of the mansion one last time, the same place she had entered every day in silence. This time, she didn't look back. And somewhere inside that mansion, behind glass walls and wealth, a man finally learned what silence feels like when it's filled with shame. He would never forget the way she looked at him, like she saw through the suit, through the money, straight into the emptiness he'd spent his life hiding. That night, the world saw a dance. But Ethan Moreau, he saw something else. He saw the mirror he'd been avoiding all his life, and the reflection that changed everything. And that was just the beginning. The morning after the ballroom scandal, the world had already chosen sides. The video had spread across every corner of the internet. Millionaire mocks black maid, then this happens. It was everywhere. Phones, news stations, morning talk shows. Millions watched Amara's quiet defiance, her graceful dance, and the way she'd walked away without asking for applause. The internet called her the maid who danced with dignity. But inside Ethan Moreau's penthouse, the silence was brutal. The sunlight streamed through glass walls, touching his half-empty bottle of whiskey. His phone buzzed endlessly. PR teams, investors, tabloids. Every call sounded the same: outrage, panic, demands for damage control. His empire, built on charm and arrogance, was crumbling, and it all started with one dance. He threw the phone against the wall. "Find her," he snapped at his assistant. "Fire her. Today." His voice was sharp, cold, trembling with humiliation. But when his assistant hesitated, eyes downcast, Ethan slammed his fist on the desk. "You heard me. I won't be made a joke." Yet the truth came back to him in a whisper that stung more than any headline. "She already quit, sir." The night of the party. Amara was gone. Down in her part of the city, far from chandeliers and marble, Amara stood outside her tiny apartment. The morning air smelled of bread and rain. Neighbors smiled and waved, children calling her name as she passed. The neighborhood was cracked, tired, but it was alive, nothing like the hollow perfection of Ethan's world. Amara walked to the community center, the place she'd loved since she was a child. Inside, the walls were faded, the mirrors old, but the space pulsed with laughter and rhythm. She slipped off her shoes and began teaching. Little feet stomped, arms flailed, giggles filled the room. They called her Miss Grace, and in their eyes, she wasn't a maid. She was art. For the first time in years, Amara felt free. She hadn't planned to become anyone's symbol. She just wanted peace, a place where no one could reduce her to a uniform. Meanwhile, in a high-rise office above the city, Ethan's life was unraveling. Board members demanded statements. Investors withdrew. The Moreau Holdings stock dropped overnight. But none of it hurt as much as the silence inside him. He kept replaying that night, her steady eyes, the way she refused to beg, the quiet power in her walk. He poured another drink, stared at his reflection, and whispered, "Why can't I forget her?" For the first time, he saw what the world had always seen, a man made of money but starved of soul. Days turned into weeks. The media moved on, chasing new scandals. But Ethan didn't. He spent his nights alone in the dark, haunted by the sound of her words. "You said you'd marry me if I danced this tango." He laughed bitterly to himself. "You didn't just dance, Amara. You undressed my pride." Then came the day everything collided again. Amara was mid-lesson when her friend burst into the studio, waving a letter. "It's the community center," she said breathlessly. "They're tearing it down. The land's been sold." Amara froze. "Sold? To who?" Her friend's eyes dropped. "Morrow Holdings." For a moment, Amara couldn't speak. The children's laughter faded into echoes. Her chest tightened. It wasn't enough that he'd mocked her. Now he was taking away the one place that gave her purpose. She didn't wait to change. Didn't wait to think. She ran. The city was drenched in late afternoon light when she stormed into the sleek glass tower of Morrow Holdings. Security guards rushed forward, shouting, but she pushed past them, her bare feet slipping against the marble. Her heart pounded, anger and heartbreak crashing like waves. When she reached the top floor, she didn't knock, she burst in. Ethan looked up from behind his desk, startled. For a moment, neither spoke. The sight was cinematic, her simple dance clothes against his polished luxury. Her breath came in heavy bursts, his in guilty silence. "Amara," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. "You took everything from us once," she said, voice trembling but firm. "Don't take this too." He blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "The community center," she said, her voice cracking now. "You bought it. You're demolishing it." Ethan turned pale. I didn't know. My team." She stepped closer. "Your team carries your name. Your power. Your signature. And your silence." Her words sliced through him. He looked away, ashamed. For the first time, he didn't have the strength to be arrogant. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he muttered. "But you did," she said softly. "And not just me. You hurt kids who had nothing but that place." Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. "Do you ever stop to think about who you step on to climb higher?" He had no answer. Just silence. Amara turned and walked toward the door. "You mocked me, Ethan. You made me dance for your entertainment. I gave you grace, and you answered with destruction." As she left, the air seemed to collapse around him. Rain streaked down the windows. Outside, thunder rolled over the city like judgment. Ethan stood there, watching her go, and for once, he didn't see a maid. He saw the woman he could never buy, never silence, never forget. That night, Amara sat by her window, watching the rain soak the streets. She felt broken but unbowed. Some battles, she realized, aren't about winning, they're about standing up, even when you're tired of standing. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights flickering like ghosts. He poured himself another drink, but the taste was bitter. On his desk lay the signed demolition papers. He stared at them until the ink seemed to blur. Then he saw her face again, not angry, not vengeful, just disappointed. He whispered to the empty room, "What have I become?" The thunder answered. Somewhere beneath the same storm, Amara closed her eyes and prayed for strength, not revenge. Her mother's words echoed again, "Grace doesn't mean weakness, baby. It means strength that refuses to hate." And as lightning flashed across the skyline, both of them, the billionaire in his tower and the dancer in her small apartment, felt the same truth settling in their chests. The past wasn't done with them yet. The dance wasn't over. It was only waiting for its next song. The night of the charity gala arrived like a dream dressed in diamonds. The ballroom was carved from gold and glass, chandeliers dripping light like champagne. Every guest glowed in arrogance. Every laugh sliced through the air like polished steel. No one knew what was about to happen. When the orchestra began to play the tango, all eyes turned toward the center stage. Mr. Alastair Kane, the millionaire, rose from his table. His tuxedo shimmered, his grin smug and sharp. "I promised entertainment," he said, raising his glass. "And tonight, my maid will deliver it." Gasps. Then laughter. At the far end of the room, Amara stood frozen. The tray in her hands trembled. The red dress she wore, simple, borrowed from one of the other staff, suddenly felt like a target. She wasn't supposed to be seen, let alone perform. "Come, Amara," Cain called, his voice smooth and cruel. "Let's show them how well the help can dance." The crowd cheered, some with amusement, others with pity. The music swelled. The tango's rhythm began, sharp, alive, defiant. And Amara stepped forward. Each step echoed across the marble. Her heartbeat matched the drums. Her chin lifted, not in submission, but in quiet war. Cain extended his hand, expecting hesitation. Instead, she met his gaze, took it, and the dance began. The first movement was electric. Cain tried to lead, jerking her like a puppet. But Amara didn't break. She flowed around him. Each turn, perfect. Each flick, precise. The staff stopped serving. The guests stopped whispering. The room held its breath. Then something happened no one expected. Amara began to lead. It wasn't defiance, it was mastery. She moved with grace that belonged to something beyond class, beyond wealth. Each step told her story, of pain disguised as obedience, of dignity suffocated but never killed. The millionaire faltered. His rhythm broke. She caught his wrist mid-step and turned it into a flawless spin, saving him from falling. The audience gasped. Cain looked at her, really looked, for the first time. That's when he noticed her tears. They weren't of fear, but of power. Every step she took now was revenge wrapped in beauty. Every twirl whispered, "You can humiliate me, but you can't define me." When the music hit its final beat, Amara spun away and froze, arms lifted, eyes burning, chest heaving. The orchestra stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Then, applause. Not polite claps, but thunder. A standing ovation that shook the chandeliers. The guests who once laughed now shouted her name. Even those who pitied her now rose to their feet, ashamed and awed. Cain stood there, stunned. His face pale. His pride shattered. For a brief moment, he saw himself in the reflection of her strength, and he hated it. He forced a smile and tried to laugh it off. "Well," he said hoarsely, "looks like I'll have to keep my word." The guests chuckled, not realizing the meaning. But Amara did. She turned, looked him in the eye, and said softly, "You couldn't afford me." The ballroom erupted again, this time not in laughter, but in gasps. She placed the tray on the nearest table, bowed to the crowd, and walked out. No tears now. No fear. Just silence, the kind that follows a storm. Outside, the night air kissed her skin. For the first time in years, Amara felt free. Inside, Cain stood motionless. Every eye in the room on him, waiting to see what the mighty man would do. But for once, the millionaire had no words. The tango was over. Yet everyone knew they had just witnessed something greater than a dance. They had witnessed a reckoning. For days, the city couldn't stop talking about her. The maid who danced with the millionaire. The woman who turned humiliation into grace. The story that cracked open the walls of power. Clips from the gala leaked online. A video of that final spin, of Amara leading the dance, her face shining with defiance, spread like wildfire. Within hours, millions had seen it. Within days, the world had chosen a side. #SheDanced trended everywhere. People whispered, "Did you see the look on his face when she said, 'You couldn't afford me?'" News anchors replayed it. Influencers analyzed it. Activists celebrated it. But to Amara, it wasn't a movement. It was closure. She never wanted fame. She only wanted peace. And yet, peace never arrives quietly. One morning, as she left the small cafe where she'd started working, a familiar black car pulled up. The door opened. Out stepped Alistair Cain. Gone was the smugness. Gone the smirk. He looked human. Tired. Heavy. The air between them felt sharp, like unspoken apologies waiting to breathe. "Amara," he said, voice lower than she remembered. "May I speak to you?" She didn't run. She didn't smile. She just nodded, once. They sat on a park bench nearby, the same city that had once separated them now a witness to something raw. "I was cruel to you," Cain began, "because I thought cruelty made me powerful. But that night, you showed me what real power looks like." Amara didn't answer. Her silence forced him to keep going. "I saw your dance again," he said. "Over and over. I thought I was the one being watched that night. But now I realize I was being judged. By everyone. By myself. And I deserved it." He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," he said softly. She looked down. A check, 6 months of salary, multiplied by 10. Enough to change her life. But Amara didn't take it. She pushed it gently back toward him. "I don't need your money, Mr. Kane," she said. "I needed your respect. But I learned something that night. You can't give what you don't have." He froze. The words hit harder than any slap could. Tears welled in his eyes. Not for pity, for the realization of what he had lost. Not just reputation, but humanity. Amara stood. The morning light fell on her face like a blessing. "We both danced that night," she said. "But only one of us changed." And then she walked away. Months passed. Amara opened her own dance studio in a quiet part of town. Children came from every background, poor, rich, forgotten, hopeful. She taught them rhythm, but also dignity. "Every step," she told them, "is a choice. Don't let anyone choreograph your worth." Sometimes, when the sun dipped low, she danced alone. Not to prove anything. Just to remember. Because somewhere deep down, she knew that the tango wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the right to exist beautifully, even when the world tried to shame you. As for Alistair Kane, his empire began to crumble. Investors withdrew. Board members whispered. The scandal became a symbol. But instead of fleeing, he changed. He sold his mansion, liquidated assets, and began funding scholarships for domestic workers' children. No press. No cameras. Just quiet atonement. One evening, he walked past a community hall and heard music drifting out, a familiar rhythm, soft and haunting. Through the window, he saw her. Amara, teaching young girls how to move with pride. Their laughter echoed through the air. For a moment, Kane smiled. Not with regret, but with reverence. He turned away, whispering to himself, "She won." And that's how the story ended, not with applause, but with awakening. Because in the end, real victory isn't about making the powerful fall. It's about reminding them what power was meant to protect. Amara didn't marry the millionaire. She married her freedom. She danced her way back to her soul. And the world. It learned a lesson that night beneath the chandeliers. Dignity is the only wealth no one can steal.